Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new ProRevenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Oh, It's Not Your Job? It Is Now." Intro and backstory: my dad was a mechanic for 20 plus years, and for as long as I can remember, I drove him nuts because I would go around the house with a screwdriver he left out and take everything apart because I wanted to see how it worked. As I grew older, I developed an affinity towards computers and electronics, which led me to be that kid in high school who changed his grades, crashed the school district's servers, and used the netsend command with great success. I would spend my weekends either with my grandparents and uncle working on science projects or dragging my dad outside to help me fix my car, which consisted of him telling me that he would help once I got it taken apart. Those figure it out lessons were probably the greatest gift he could have given me growing up. I joined the US Army in March of 2004 and went into communications, or commo for short, 25U, where I managed to go from PVT E1 when I joined to Sergeant E5 by the time I returned from my deployment at the beginning of 2007. After returning home, I was subsequently transferred from a light infantry unit walking everywhere to a mechanized infantry unit riding in an armored vehicle everywhere, and placed in charge of the battalion commo shop because the current person running the commo shop was scheduled to retire in a few months and I was the only other NCO. This is where things got interesting and my commo vs. Mechanics ProRevenge story starts. Commo versus Mechanics, as anyone else that was in the US Army can attest to, every Monday was motor pool maintenance, which essentially means go make sure all the tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles BFV, or anything else with a motor works the way it should. This included testing all the radios and communication equipment as well. If it didn't work, we filled out the maintenance forms with the correct shop and have them fix it. All the issues would later be consolidated into a report that the leadership team would review. If a vehicle was on that report, the leadership team wanted to know why it wasn't fixed. I ran my shop using the same approach my dad taught me, which was figure it out and don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution. One Monday morning, shortly after taking charge of the commo shop, one of my soldiers came to me with a problem he couldn't figure out and asked if I could come help him. I agreed and followed him over to the BFV that was giving him problems. After a few hours of troubleshooting, we finally traced the problem to the BFV's slip ring. We double and triple checked that indeed was the problem because 1. Slip rings in general have a low failure rate, and 2. It wasn't something we could fix on our own. It required help from the mechanics because the slip ring required taking apart the interior of the BFV turret to actually get to it. So, I went to the mechanics to get their help so we could fix the problem. This is when I learned the mechanics didn't like the commo shop. I was essentially told by the motor chief to F off and the slip ring is a commo issue and it's the commo shop's job to fix it, not theirs. I was upset at the response and tried to insist we needed his help. However, I was promptly shut down and told to pound sand. At this point, I was beyond P*SSED. I tried the official way. I even swallowed my pride and asked him nicely. Both times I was SH*T on. I decided I was going to play global thermonuclear war and teach him a lesson that neither he nor anyone else in his shop would forget. So, I went to my guys and told them I would be back in about an hour or two because I needed to run home and grab some stuff. When I got home, I went directly for the garage and started packing all the wrenches, impacts, and sockets that I could fit into my portable toolbox. I also loaded up the portable air compressor and any extension cords I could find and made my way back to the motor pool. Once I got back to the motor pool, I had my guys locate every extension cord they could find around the office because I could only find one in my garage, and help me run power out to the BFV that we were going to have to fix ourselves. Meanwhile, I also had 2 of the guys run to the HQ and find me 2 of largest empty coffee cans they could find. I ended up having to tell them twice because the first time they thought I was joking. They couldn't understand why I needed a coffee can of all things. When they returned with coffee cans, I had everything in place. I had power, compressed air, tools, and a place to neatly put all of the bolts, nuts, and washers I was about to remove. Under normal circumstances, I would only remove the things that absolutely had to be removed. The fewer things to put back together, the better. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I had absolutely no intention of putting anything back together. It was about lunchtime and I decided my way of fixing this issue probably wasn't the best example to set for my team, so I sent them to lunch and told them I would handle this issue so they could focus on the other vehicles when they got back. For the next few hours I proceeded to dismantle every single bolt I could find. I removed seats, interior plates, shelves, pretty much anything that wasn't electrical or commo related got removed. I would then place all of the newly removed hardware in the coffee can. By the time I reached the turret I had filled up both coffee cans with nuts, bolts and washers, so I had to go find something else to start putting this stuff in. Luckily we had Ziploc bags by the dozen laying around the office. I grabbed a couple of those and went back to having fun taking apart the BFV. I finally reached the slip ring and managed to luck out. I didn't have to replace the slip ring after all. Turns out the mechanics didn't install one of the cable mounts and one of the commo cables got snagged and subsequently cut. It probably took me less than 15 minutes at that point to replace the cable and missing cable mount. Of course the fact that I completely removed everything in the way helped because now I didn't have to fish the cable through anything. Once I replaced the cable and made sure all of the other commo equipment worked, I figured while I had everything taken apart it would be much easier to fix any other problems they might have been having. All commo systems checked out, my job was done. Everything that I had taken out of the BFV was then gently and neatly stacked in the interior of the BFV. I put the lids on the coffee cans, zipped up the bags, pulled out my trusty Sharpie, and wrote bolts on each of them. Once everything was tidied up, I went off to find the owner of the BFV and let him know his commo issue was fixed, but he should probably have a mechanic look at his BFV because I had to disassemble some, and by some I meant most, of the vehicle in order to get to the part one needed to replace, and I couldn't remember how everything went back together. I stared out of my office window for the rest of the day waiting for the mechanics to get around to looking at the BFV. I still remember the reaction of the motor chief when looked inside that vehicle, and if I didn't know any better I could have sworn his head rotated around 3 times and damn near popped off. His reaction was absolutely priceless. I knew he was about to storm into my shop in a fit of rage, so I got up and decided it was probably best to meet him outside in motor pool. As soon as I reached earshot distance he started screaming and demanding I put the vehicle back the way I found it. However, I was having none of that. I simply shook my head and told him it was a mechanical issue now and it wasn't my job. I asked for your help in the beginning and was told no because it wasn't your job. I'm just a commo guy. The first didn't know what needed to be removed so I could fix the commo issue in the slip ring, so I removed everything. If someone from your team would have been there, I think this whole misunderstanding could have been avoided. That vehicle remained on the weekly report for the next 3 weeks while they figured out what bolts went where. However, after that incident I was never told it's not my job ever again, and the mechanics were more than willing to help me fix any issues that came up. By the time I left the unit we ended up starting to cross-train each other's team members so we could fix things faster as they came up. The next one is titled, Harass Me at Work. Okay, learn your lesson first, then we can be cribbage champs together. I used to work in an office that did promotions for local charity events and fundraisers. Crap pay but awesome co-workers, and the blueberry scones in the office cafe were flat out amazing. Our office was small as offices go, about 20 employees including the 2 managers. Our top boss, who I will call Bob, was really sweet. Constantly having friendly contests with prizes for the most donations and such. I won a basketball that I donated to the kids in my church, haha. He was the kind of guy that would give you $20 from his own pocket if you need lunch money. I miss him. But I digress. Our office was a lot like the TV show. We were a close family of sorts who celebrated each other's birthdays, drew names at Christmas and ate lunch together. All was rainbows and flowers until Steve strode into our happy kingdom of blissful sunshine. Steve was tall. Steve was large. Steve had a thing for girls with big boobs. Steve had been fired from the hospital morgue for having relations with the deceased. Into Steve's line of vision came my friends and myself. The 3 girls in the office whose attributes appealed to him. Day 1 Steve sidled over to our end of the office and leered at us. "Hey ladies." Staring at our chests, we mumbled, shifted, and went back to work. "No problem, right? Oh, how wrong you are." This began a daily onslaught of touching, rubbing, comments, stroking our hair, lewd remarks, and pouting because we didn't reciprocate. We went to Bob. We went to the second manager. They threatened him. It continued. Until the day I was on the phone with a client and he grabbed my arm in a vice and started whispering in my ear while I was talking to the client. I was struggling to stay professional while trying and failing to get away from him. I finally hung up and screamed, "Let go of me," while bursting into tears. Now, this was the 90s. Recognition for sexual harassment was still in its infancy. Help for it was almost non-existent. Unless you worked in our office, haha. Second manager came roaring over, hauling Steve off me and making sure I was okay. Told me to take the rest of the day. The revenge, and the surprising outcome. I went home and took the next day as well to settle my nerves. When I returned to work, the office was buzzing. The girls gathered around me asking if I knew what had happened after I left. Nope. The guys in our office gathered in the hall and waited for Steve. When he came out for a smoke, they jumped him, pinned him up against the wall, and while I was never privy to what was said, I was let know they beat him pretty good and put the fear of God in him. Steve didn't return for a few days. When he came back, he was a broken man, black eye, bruised face. He came up to me and loudly apologized, saying he knew how wrong he was and promised to play nice from then on. The outcome? Steve was a changed man. Turns out he was actually a pretty decent guy. While eating lunch one day, someone brought out a cribbage board and everyone was surprised to learn I didn't know how to play, so Steve offered to teach me. I found I loved the game and Steve and I quickly became the team to beat, going on to win the office championship. I left there a few years later. When I left, everyone chipped in for gifts and cards, and Steve gave me a hug. I hugged him back. The next one is titled, "They Stole My Security Deposit, So They Lost Their Staff and Their Reputation." So, background. Around Thanksgiving 2017, my wife's company offered her a fantastic promotion, which she accepted even though it meant moving across the state by January 1st. The month of December was insanity: list and sell the house, find a short-term rental which would accept 4 pets, pack, move, etc. A lot of whiskey magically disappeared, but I got it all done and we moved into our rental house and all was well. We bought our new home and moved, and the rental lease officially ended on April 1st. The property manager followed the state laws correctly so far, and we were told we'd get the $1,800 owed for our security deposit back by May. Spoiler alert, it never came. I spent the next 4 months going back and forth with the property manager and hearing, "It's coming, we never got your paperwork, blah blah." I got sick of this and got 2 different lawyers involved and sent them official demand letters. I also filed a formal complaint with the State Division of Real Estate against their license. The PM kept telling the state investigators that they would pay us back, but nothing ever happened. I didn't want to formally sue via our lawyer because he charges $300 per hour and it's all up front. I was hesitant to go to small claims court because it's a $5,000 max in our state and the damages were legally owed a 3x the $1,800 deposit, which puts us over the cap, so I'd have to give up on some of the damages we're legally entitled to seek, eat roughly $500 total in fees, and then go through that whole process for the next year, and assuming we won the judgment, then go through the collection process for another year or 2. An option, one we'd win, but a big pain in my ass. So this is where the ProRevenge comes in. It was initially petty. Say their website is crappypropertymanager.com. I bought crappypropertymanager.co for $12 and posted all of my screenshots and info about their theft and bullsh *T for the world to see, and then I bombed it all over their business Facebook pages as well as the personal pages for the main partners and their Yelp page. I got a kick out of it. They took their pages down. Petty revenge wins, right? My little website caused a bigger boom than I anticipated. Basically, this PM has 2 principal agents in charge and a broker. One of the agents is married to the broker. Beneath them, they have had 5 realtors. I sent my new website to them all, everywhere I could. Turns out the partner, who isn't married to the broker, had no idea that the broker and his wife were stealing money from the PM company. Their realtors had no idea, either. 2 of them quit immediately, and one reached out to me to let me know why she quit and that she was going to a new broker. But the other principal of the company was mortified. She asked me to leave her name out of it, take the stuff down, etc. And I just politely but coldly replied that hey, your business partner's broker stole my money and I can back everything I'm saying with documents, not my problem. She promised she'd get things resolved, and for the first time in 10 months, the broker started answering my emails. We worked out a deal and they're now paying us $200 per month until December, which will cover the amount owed plus the extra for our legal fees. The first check came last week. It actually bounced, but I made them send me a cashier's check, and they have to send cashier's checks going forward, so we did get our first installment. I've also learned that the state investigation has been turned over to the state's legal department, and the broker and his wife will likely lose their license. The state investigator said they had multiple complaints against them, but I was the most thorough and had the most documentation against them, so our complaint was a big reason they had the ammo to push it to the legal team. So all told, my sh*tty little website ended up costing them 40% of their real estate team, resulted in them removing their business FB listings, pushed the investigation into their license over to a state legal team, still ongoing, and resulted in them having to finally start paying us not only the $1,800 we're owed but the legal fees I spent on top of it. Oh, and that bounced check. I made them send me a certified check for $12 to cover the bank fee for that too. The next one is titled, "She Got Revenge on Her Abusive Ex with His Own Paperwork." This all started several years ago during my parents' divorce, but the revenge took place this November. Backstory: growing up, my father was an emotionally abusive piece of crap who got off of religious authority and controlling every aspect of our lives. We were kept so isolated and made to fear the police, CPS, to the point where we thought it was normal. After I went off to college, my little brother came out as gay and my father started beating him, unbeknownst to my mother and me. When my brother threatened to tell my mum about this, my father kicked the then 15-year-old out of the house. My mother was understandably horrified by this and tried to get my father to see sense, at which point he started hitting her. Long story somewhat short, I got my mum out. My brother went to live with friends, and divorce proceedings were started. It was nasty. No one wanted to go to the police. Father was friends with the local small-town cops, and thankfully my idiot sperm donor agreed to a no-fault divorce. While my mum was cleaning out her stuff from the house under the watchful eye of her amazing co-workers, she found my father's discharge papers. This is where the plan started. You see, my father spent his entire 25-year marriage telling everyone that he was a Special Forces vet who had been awarded a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, which were both coincidentally destroyed in a house fire, along with all his uniforms and paperwork. But here were his discharge papers, and they clearly stated he was given an other than honorable discharge after 4 years in the motor pool. Not wanting to be seen as the vindictive ex-wife, my mum quietly took the papers and didn't tell anyone for years after my father moved away to a new state to join a militia. When she finally told me while tipsy this past year, we hatched a plan. Over the next few months we snooped on social media to make a list of his former and current employers, family, major friends that we knew of, and his new church. She enlisted our extended family and my college friends from all over the country. In November we each purchased Veterans Day cards and wrote out messages such as "Stolen Valor," "Motor Pool," "Pretender," etc. Everyone attached a photocopy of the page listing his discharge. And then we sent them on the same day from the nearest major cities with the return address listed as his current church. They arrived on or around Veterans Day from Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, D.C., New York, St. Louis, Kansas City, Seattle, Portland, L.A., Houston, Ontario, London, and Edinburgh. Immediately my mother was inundated with calls, emails from people who had no idea and couldn't believe he would lie like that, and were sorry for not believing her, my brother. My dipsh*t dad sent a nasty email implying horrible things if he ever could prove my mother did this, which she forwarded straight to her lawyer along with the nasty letters from his more vocal supporters. Now most people in our hometown look at her as the battered spouse who walked out with her head held high rather than that tramp who divorced such a godly man. My little brother has no idea we did this. He didn't want anyone to confront my father, but later told me he got a random call from our old pastor apologizing for kicking him out of the church over my father's lies. And I can finally sleep well at night with the knowledge that his reputation is in shambles by our hands. Revenge truly is a dish best served cold. The last one is titled, "Pick on My Daughter. I'll Find You." So, my daughter, who was about 8 at the time, was really into Minecraft, as most kids are these days. Also desperately wanting to join the YouTube Let's Play culture, I had installed some screen recording software that would let her make videos of the games she was playing so she could later upload them to YouTube. Anyways, one day I'm minding my own business when I hear her quietly sniffling over on the computer. I asked her what was wrong, but she didn't want to tell me, so I let it go, but decided to keep an eye on her. A few minutes later I discovered what was happening. Someone was harassing not only her but also all the other kids playing on whatever server she was on. This kid, we'll call him little sh*thed, or LS, was saying crap about how he was going to hack into her IP and steal all her info, swearing profusely, remember, this is a game for kids, etc., etc. By this time I had gotten my fiancée involved, and she was also obviously quite upset at what a little crap this kid was being. We realized that our daughter had been recording the entire incident, and a plan began to form. I started by Googling LS's username. There were several hits immediately, the most interesting of which involved a page where he was publicly applying to be a mod for a server on Minecraft. I was able to learn a lot about this little POS. He claimed to be 15, likes hockey, used to live in Toronto but now lives in Florida. But the bombshell was easily his Skype contact info. It was literally first name, last name. I know your name now, you little idiot. So I head over to Facebook and search for the name. Nothing. On a hunch, I searched for just the last name, while narrowing my results to only the state of Florida. Several dozen hits. So I have to start combing through each one until I find what I was looking for, a middle-aged man with the same last name, whose profile indicates he was born in Toronto and now lives in Florida. I found your dad, you little idiot. So I sent him a message on Facebook, asking if he had a son named first name, who goes by his username on Minecraft. Dad confirmed I had the right guy. So my wife begins telling the dad everything that LS was saying to my daughter, and we sent him the recorded video as proof. Radio silence for a few days. Then we got the message back. LS had his computer taken away from him for the entire summer and had also been lying about his age. He was only 11, I think. His parents were ducking livid with him, and he surely hated the next few months of his life. Thanks for listening.